Good evening. I am Father Gilbert, Salesian of Don Bosco from the Kolkata province of Don Bosco. This is Nidhiga Don Bosco, where I am talking from, and this is part of the monthly recollection series that we have been providing every month during this pandemic. This is a fourth one, and the theme is about death. Let me introduce to you the content of my presentation. I will begin by saying what is the purpose and why this topic was chosen. Then I will introduce you to three experiences of three different people on this theme. That will introduce us to the entire theme of our reflection during this half an hour. Then we will see also reasons for exercising for a happy death. Why do we need to exercise for a happy death? Few reasons behind. And we also will go to 5 tips or 5 ways to do this art of dying, or learning to do the art of dying. And after that, we'll have a concluding thought and some points for reflection, introspection. So this is what I am intending to do. Let us begin with the first point. Why this topic? There is only one reason why this topic, because of this month November. The month November is dedicated to all souls, dedicated to the souls in Purgatory, and also the month began with All Saints. The following day we remembered All Souls, and the entire month we are remembering all the souls. When we pray for the souls, think of the souls, our dear departed, we also think of our own death. And when we think of our own death, we think of our own life. So, praying for the dead, remembering the dead, is also remembering our own end, our own death. It's a reflection and meditation on our own life. And that was the reason this topic was chosen. Let us now go to 3 experiences of 3 different people. I'll begin with a book written by Mitch Albom. The book is called Tuesdays with Maury. What is this book? It's a memoir written in 1997 by a person called Mitch Albom. What is it about? This book is a memoir, almost like a biography. A former student of a sociologist professor who is towards his end of his life, and he goes to visit him every Tuesdays of the week. So it's about a series of talks. His professor, his name is Maury Schwartz, sociology professor, and he is affected by ALS, a kind of sickness. What is ALS? ALS is called amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, if I am pronouncing it correctly. Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. What is this sickness? A kind of sickness, something like a paralysis, where your part of the system becomes dysfunctional or inactive, and inch by inch, some parts are dead. So that is this sickness, and he was affected by that. And this former student, Albom, used to visit him every Tuesday. And this professor, former professor, sociology professor, his own professor, used to teach him lessons of life. And this book contained that. This book became the bestseller in 2000 among the non-fiction category. There are movie versions of this, television version. I have seen the television version of this particular book, memoir. And in this book subtitle, you can see what is written there: an old man, a young man, and life's greatest lesson. An old man, a young man, and life's greatest lesson. That's the main focus of this book. And in this book, you will find Maury's advices and lessons of life to his former student, to Albom. Some of his advices or some of his lessons of life, let me introduce to you about death. He says, the truth is, once you learn how to die, you learn how to live. That means, once you learn the art of dying well, you will learn the art of living well. So, once each one of us prepare ourselves to die well, then you are preparing yourself to live well. Words of wisdom from this former professor. Again he says, death ends life, but not our relationship. With the death, life is ended, but not a relationship. Memories and connectivity continue even after death. Again, he speaks about aging and getting old. This is his advice. As you grow, you learn more. Aging is not just decay, its growth. It's more than the negative that you are going to die. It's also the positive that you understand that you are going to die and that you live a better life because of it. Aging is a growth. Aging is a learning process, and you are learning more. You never stop learning, even with your aging. And finally, this is his final advice. He says, life is a series of pulls, back and forth. You want to do one thing, but you are bound to do something else. Our life is like that, a kind of struggle, a kind of pull back and forth. You want to do something, but you do something else. St. Paul had this pull back and forth. He says in one of his letters, the very thing I want to do, I'm not doing. I do something else. So all of us go through this struggle in life. And this great professor died on November 4th. Today is the death anniversary of this professor. He died in 1995. Maury Schwartz died of ALS. And on his tomb, interesting, this was written, a teacher until the end. That's a very nice epitaph. I wish I had that epitaph on my tombstone. A teacher until the end. His whole life was teaching, not just through words, but through his life. And that's a great lesson, life's greatest lesson on life and death. Let me introduce you to another person's experience, and that is M. Scott Peck. He has written a book, The Road Less Traveled, another bestseller. And in this book, he speaks about people's approach towards death, people's attitude towards death, based on a research done by Elizabeth Kubler based on her book, The Dying. And let us listen to these words of M. Scott Peck about people's attitude towards death.
Death and the inevitability of our own death is not a subject that many people can talk about comfortably. The psychiatrist Scott Peck, author of the book The Road Less Travelled, says that he has to push at least half of his patients to face the reality of their death. He argues that their reluctance to face the reality of death seems to be a part of their illness. He believes that we live in a cowardly, death-denying culture. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, formerly the professor of psychiatry at the University of Chicago, has written extensively on the subject of death and dying. In fact, the title of her best-known book is On Death and Dying. She has found that people invariably go through various stages when they're told they're dying, and she outlines the 5 stages of grief. The first stage is denial. People deny that they're dying. It can't be happening to me. It's a wrong diagnosis. There must be a mistake. And when they finally accept the fact of their approaching death, they get angry angry at the doctors, angry at the nurses, angry at the hospital, angry at their relatives, angry at God. And when anger doesn't get them anywhere, they start to bargain. Take away my cancer and I'll go back to church again. Maybe if I start being nicer to family, things will improve. And when bargaining doesn't seem to get any results, they become depressed. Those people who work through the stage of depression enter the fifth stage, that of acceptance. This is a stage of great spiritual calm and tranquility, and even light. But sadly, not everyone reaches this final stage.
The third experience is from another person, Steve Jobs. He comes from the IT world, the founder of Apple company. He died a few years back. This is his address to university students on their convocation day. Part of his talk I'm going to present to you.
My third story is about death. When I was 17, I read a quote that went something like, "If you live each day as if it was your last, someday you'll most certainly be right." It made an impression on me, and since then, for the past 33 years, I have looked in the mirror every morning and asked myself, if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I am about to do today? And whenever the answer has been no for too many days in a row, I know I need to change something. Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life. Because almost everything, all external expectations, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure, these things just fall away in the face of death, leaving only what is truly important. Remembering that you are going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. You are already naked. There is no reason not to follow your heart. About a year ago, I was diagnosed with cancer. I had a scan at 7:30 in the morning, and it clearly showed a tumor on my pancreas. I didn't even know what a pancreas was. The doctors told me this was almost certainly a type of cancer that is incurable, and that I should expect to live no longer than 3 to 6 months. My doctor advised me to go home and get my affairs in order, which is doctor's code for prepare to die. It means to try and tell your kids everything you thought you'd have the next 10 years to tell them in just a few months. It means to make sure everything is buttoned up so that it will be as easy as possible for your family. It means to say your goodbyes. I lived with that diagnosis all day. Later that evening, I had a biopsy where they stuck an endoscope down my throat, through my stomach and into my intestines, put a needle into my pancreas and got a few cells from the tumor. I was sedated, but my wife, who was there, told me that when they viewed the cells under a microscope, the doctors started crying because it turned out to be a very rare form of pancreatic cancer that is curable with surgery. I had the surgery, and thankfully, I'm fine now. This was the closest I've been to facing death, and I hope it's the closest I get for a few more decades. Having lived through it, I can now say this to you with a bit more certainty than when death was a useful but purely intellectual concept. No one wants to die. Even people who want to go to heaven don't want to die to get there. And yet, death is the destination we all share. No one has ever escaped it. And that is as it should be, because death is very likely the single best invention of life. It's life's change agent. It clears out the old to make way for the new. Right now, the new is you. But someday, not too long from now, you will gradually become the old and be cleared away. Sorry to be so dramatic, but it's quite true.
All the three persons in their own way say the same experiences in a different way, but same thing. What do they say? Death is inevitable. We have to prepare ourselves towards our own death. we need to learn the art of dying. And when we learn the art of dying, we learn to live well. We learn the art of living. And death is not the end, it is only a change agent. And death brings a change in our own lifestyle. And we need to focus our attention towards death when we are alive. Archbishop Fulton Sheen used to say, "You and I came into this world to live, but Jesus came into this world to die." He had a focus, a mission, and that mission was his death. So, even for us, the final mission is our death. So, how do we prepare ourselves for death? Today for our monthly reflection, based on this, our topics will be on death, basically praying for the dead, meditating on the death, and also reflecting on death. And also by reflecting and focusing on our own deaths, we will be reflecting on our own lives. So why do we need to do this art of dying, exercise for a happy death? Let me give you the first reason. The first reason is this. We are belonging to a church called a United Church, which has got three different communities. The first church or first community is called our own, Living. We are part of the Living Church, which is called Militant Church. And we are called Militant Church because we struggle against the forces of evil while we are alive. The pull back and forth, as Maury says in his own way. And we also have another church, Suffering Church, the souls in purgatory. And we have the third church, Triumphant Church, the saints in heaven. We remember the Triumphant Church on first, the Suffering Church on second, and the entire month we remember also the Suffering Church. And we are alive, who are alive, part of the Militant Church. But we are not independent, separate churches. We are one church. There is only one church. A church comprising of all these three together. One tree of the same branch. Together we form one church. They are part of us. The dead are part of us. Saints are part of our lives. We are connected to them. We support each other. We pray for the souls in purgatory. Saints help us and intercede for us. And we all help each other. This is a supporting system of our family. And we are a family. Our church is a family where we need to be responsible for each other, not only for those who are alive, but also for those who are dead. And also, we are also connected, and also we need to be connected to the saints in heaven. They are not apart from us. They are all part of our life. Second reason, why do we need to learn this art? We need to exercise to die well. How do we need to exercise to die well? In fact, the monthly reflection that we call for this talk, once upon a time in our own Salesian setting, it was called exercise for a happy death. Now we have removed that term. Now common term is monthly reflection or monthly reflection day. Earlier, it was called exercise for a happy death. When we joined our Salesian congregation, we as aspirants, even later as novices, the phrase or term used was exercise for a happy death. And what is this exercise for a happy death? I still remember the first exercise for a happy death, that is monthly reflection, we had when we joined in the first year, some 40 years back. And what does it mean to us? We did not know what was it. So the father in charge introduced to us what is the purpose of exercise for a happy death. And he explained to us in a simple language, exactly like we exercise for a game or a discipline like a music, or train ourselves for a particular type of sports. We need to exercise well. As we exercise for our health, exercise for our body, exercise for our death. We need to exercise well. And in fact, during the monthly reflection, that is exercise for a happy death, we used to say a prayer together at that time. And you know that prayer, very frightening prayer. Prayer for the one who would die among us first. And that prayer we used to say every month. prayer for the one who will die among us first. And when that prayer goes on, some of us will look at each other, who is the one who will going to die? Frightening. Now, this entire concept is not spoken about, and we are not thinking about death even during monthly recollection, and somehow people think thinking about death is not the right way to live. But I don't think so. Christians don't think so. Bible don't think so. Our saints did not think so. In fact, Don Bosco used this phrase even at that time, exercise for a happy death, even for his young people. These are his words. He says, do not neglect the exercise for a happy death once a month, and examine your conscience to see what you should acquire, correct, or take away, so that you might be a good soldier of Christ. That means every month when we go through this exercise for a happy death, Don Bosco is reminding the young boys, try to assess yourself, evaluate yourself, what you should keep to yourself, what you should throw away, what you should attach to yourself, what you should detach from yourself. And that is a kind of, purification of the self, preparing oneself for dying, so that you are ready to die. In fact, Dominic Savio was asked, if you have to die now during the games, what will you do? And you know what Dominic Savio said? I would continue to play, because he was ever ready to die. So that is a purpose of art of dying or exercising for a happy death. What about the Bible? Does the Bible speak about exercise for a happy death or art of dying? Yes, several places, several times. Let me give you one or two verses for you. From Ecclesiastes chapter 7 verse 2. It says, it is better to go for a funeral than for a feast. It is better to go for a funeral than for a feast. What does it mean? Most of us would like to go for feast more often. Funeral, not that much. Now with the pandemic, we cannot go for funeral or feast. But most of us must have attended feast many a times. Birthdays, jubilees, anniversaries, celebrations, feast days in the parish. Several types of feast days. And we would like to attend feast days. But the Bible is very clear. Go for funeral more. Why? Bible knows, the Word of God knows the role symmetry plays in our lives, the role death plays in our life. When I go for a funeral, when I go to cemetery and see the death or the tombs of the people who have gone away from us, that will help me, remind me to think and reflect about my own death. If I reflect about my own death, I am trying to reflect on my own life. It is very important. It is better to go for a funeral than for a feast. Psalm 90 is a psalm on death, a meditation on death. And if you read that psalm, you will find various verses about death. And what does it say? It says, make us know the shortness of our life, that we may know the wisdom of heart. That means we all have very short life in this world. And the psalmist asked the Lord, make us know the shortness of our life. Sometimes we think we are here forever. Sometimes we don't understand that. We are only for a short period. Make us know the shortness of our life, so that we may learn the wisdom. Not mere knowledge, wisdom of heart. And how long we will live? The same psalm says 70 or 80. We don't hit a century, most of us. So, very short life. And how short? The psalm compares to a blade of grass. Our life is like a blade of grass. A wind, a breeze, it just is out. It blooms in the morning and withers in the evening. That's all our life. Our life is over within seconds. And the same psalm says, our 1,000 years is just one day in the eyes of God. What we think a long time in this world, it is nothing. It's a speck, it's a dot, it's a moment in the eyes of God. Very beautiful psalm to reflect on our death. Now let me introduce to you 5 tips or 5 ways of helping ourselves to die well. or helping ourselves to exercise for a happy death. 5 tips for us to learn the art of dying. Very simple, very practical, which all of us can do. First, daily examination of conscience. It's the best way to die well. And this is the best exercise for a happy death. And when is the best time we can do? The best time we can do will be in the evening before we go to bed. Before we go to bed. Some of us, when we go to bed, we don't even think about God. When you make the sign of the cross and go to bed, say a short prayer and think about the life that you lived that day. Make an assessment of your life. Few seconds enough. And that is an examination of conscience. And a good confession, if there is a chance later to do. That's the best examination of conscience. Death is the final edition of the author of our life. But don't forget to edit daily before that final edition. God edits finally at our death. But before He edits, we have a responsibility to edit regularly and daily with the confession and also with the daily examination of conscience. Number 2, meditate on your death. It is not frightening. It is very good and it is very helpful. Thinking about my death. Jesus was focusing Himself on death, His final mission. We need to think about our death at times, and that means we will live well. And we need to reflect on our death. I remember when I was a philosophy student, soon after my novitiate, I came across a book called Wellsprings, if I am not mistaken. It was written by Anthony de Mello. And I was reading through, there was a meditation inside. Meditation on my own funeral, my own death. A very interesting meditation. Now imagine yourself, you are in a coffin and people come to pay their last respects to you. People pray, say rosaries, and they talk about you. They carry your body to the cemetery, and you see all that and think about what people think about you, what people talk about you, and how you are going to end your life. It's a beautiful meditation. If you come across that meditation from Wellsprings, please do meditate and reflect. Pray for the dead. This is a month of November dedicated to the souls, not only on November 2nd, and we have a duty and responsibility towards the dead who have gone before us. And we can help them. They are part of our family. At least say a rosary during this month. And God will do the rest. We do our part and God will do His part. Let us do something for the souls and the dear departed. Number 4, take care of the sick and elderly. When you think of death, when we think of our own death, we have to think of people who are nearing towards death. The elderly, the sick. Especially during this pandemic, there are many people who are sick, many people who are dying. They just not only need our prayers, they need our presence, our connectivity, our availability. Due to pandemic or lockdown, we may not be able to visit sometimes, but we can still connect to them through our calls or messages, or at least through our attitude towards them. We can be connected to them. It is one of the corporal works of mercy, visiting the sick. And final tip, live every age and stage of your life well. What does it mean? Don't think you are retired or tired. Even at the age of 70 or 80 or 90, even 100, you are still capable. You can live well even at any age or stage of your life, positively, cheerfully, and mindfully. So don't be frightened of death. Don't be frightened of your end. That is not the end at all. It is actually a passage. And live well at every stage. And that is why I would like to conclude with a lesson or lessons from many people who lived long and still they considered, even at the late age of their life, that they could do something for God and for others. We have beautiful examples from Bible who are well advanced in age. Simeon and Anna, well advanced in age, but their age did not matter for them. They were still, doing something very great for the Lord. We have popes in the recent times, and I like to mention 3 popes: present Pope Francis, former one, Pope Benedict XVI, and Pope John XXIII. They all have something to teach us about aging. Let us listen.
Angelo Roncalli was elected Pope at the age of 78. It's difficult to know for certain what the College of Cardinals had in mind, but some have suggested that Roncalli was elected to be a mere caretaker Pope. John the 23rd was anything but a caretaker Pope. By summoning the Second Vatican Council, he inaugurated a great era of renewal within the Church. Roncalli had kept a journal for most of his adult life, and it's been published under the title Journal of a Soul. One entry in his journal was written during a retreat that he made during Holy Week of 1945. He was then aged 64. The journal entry reads, "I must not disguise from myself the truth. I am definitely approaching old age. My mind resents this and almost rebels, for I still feel so young, eager, agile, and alert. But one look in my mirror disillusions me." Well, it was to be another 13 years before Angelo Roncalli was elected Pope at the age of 78, taking the name John the 23rd. As Pope John the 23rd, he instigated a monumental period of renewal in the Church. And let's also remember Pope Benedict, also elected to the papacy at the age of 78, several years beyond the mandatory retirement age for bishops. And Pope Francis was elected Pope at the age of 76. Like Simeon and Anna, Popes John, Benedict, and Francis were called to do great things for God well beyond the traditional age of retirement. God's call has no use-by date, no statute of limitations.
God's call has no expiry date. All of us, we are all called to do great things at every age and stage of our life. Let us now go towards the introspection, and we have some points for introspection for us to reflect. First one, read and meditate on Psalm 90. I mentioned about it. Psalm 90 is a beautiful psalm on death, a very beautiful meditation on death. Read slowly, prayerfully, and meditatively. Don't just rush when you read that psalm. Pause at every verse and reflect. It's a beautiful meditation. Number 2, how do you live a day? Do you plan your day well? Make a daily plan as you begin the day. Good to begin the day with a plan. Some of us, we don't plan at all. As it comes, we just face it. But good to plan the day. As we begin the day, as we get up, plan. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to plan for this day? Try to have some kind of planning mentality. Number 3, practice daily examination of conscience, preferably before going to bed. So, have some plan in the morning, have some examination of conscience in the evening. And this will set the day well, set the tone of your life well. Number 4, say a rosary for the souls in purgatory, preferably for unknown souls. There are prayers for our kith and kin many a times. But what about those souls for whom no one to pray for? And we do our best, and God will do the rest. Let us pray. And number 5, finally, take care of the sick and elderly. Visit, and if not, call them or be connected to them. At least pray for them. They are part of our lives, part of our militant church, those who are alive. And they are not to be considered throwaway culture. They are very, very important. Exactly like a last message, every one of us is called to do great things and achieve great things at every stage, not just now, at every stage of our life. Our life is not over, our mission is not over. The screen will be there for a minute, and the prayer for the dead, the music will be in the background as we go through these points.
Eternal rest grant to them, O Lord, and let perpetual light shine upon them. Eternal rest grant to them, O Lord, and let perpetual light shine upon them. I will never forget you, my people. I have carved you on the palm of my hand. I will never forget you. I will not leave you orphaned. I will never forget my own. Eternal rest grant to them, O Lord, and let perpetual light shine upon them. Eternal rest grant to them, O Lord, and let perpetual light shine upon them.